Welcome back. It's been a few months since this place has been an exclusive place for Google Stadia, but it's April 2021, and we're still kind of dealing with the same crap. Just I'm at a loss for words. For instance, now, pun aside, this past week we've seen a couple articles come out in the mainstream media from gaming websites, be specific, talking about Google Stadia in some way or another. One's actually dedicated to talking about Stadia, and then one's actually just dedicated to give a quick backhanded slap to them while they're talking about something else. Now, here's what we're going to do, because you know what? Sometimes you just need to say something, okay? Now, I know me saying something really won't have a blip on the radar, but hey, it makes me feel better about myself, so why not talk about it? This past week, Wired.com had an article talking about Stadia and why it's actually a decent option for those that are in a certain specific market that we've all talked about the exact market Stadia should go after. And we also have an article talking about a great game that is on the Stadia platform and was an exclusive for a while, but it's now free from Google Stadia and now on other platforms as well. So let's talk about those articles. And yes, I had to give them clicks to talk about this one. And it's exactly what they wanted, I bet. Probably. So let's talk about them, okay? Over at Wired.com from Adrian So was this little article talking about Stadia. Now, this is an article that I think is a valid article. Now, some people think it might be backhanded compliments towards Stadia, but I think there are some valid concerns that they do bring up in this article that is worth mentioning. So Adrian So wrote an article about Stadia being an actual decent option for people that are in the certain market that she herself is a part of. Now, if you want your triggering aspect to not be hit here, don't read this article because they will say the Stadia and a Stadia plenty of times, but hey, it's grammatical whatevers. But talking about in this article, she talks about how she wanted to play Cyberpunk at a certain point, but she didn't have the PC to make it run very well, and she didn't have a next-gen console either, but she had heard how Stadia's offering for Cyberpunk did just fine. Now, this was the reason why she jumped into it and was giving Cyberpunk a try. And after that, she found herself playing games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla because she had the opportunity to play somewhere, and her TV and her internet were up to the task to being able to do so. Now, going on to talk about Stadia, her biggest concern right now is the player count and trying to find players within Stadia's online communities, and that is a valid concern. But it is these kinds of things that come up in the mainstream media that is good for Stadia because it talks about people that may have trouble still to this day, over 6 months since the release of the next generation of consoles, are still struggling to find those consoles. It is still nearly impossible to be online at the same time that just happens to go live on a certain website and be able to pick one up, and they're still unavailable in stores. So Stadia is a very good option for those who are still struggling to find those new consoles and want a next-gen way to play. Granted, Stadia games aren't still necessarily next-gen just yet, but they are on their way to doing so just because of the capabilities of the service at hand. Now, there are some inconsistencies within this article that she fails to mention, and part of the lexicon she uses kind of shows that she isn't entirely 100% in tune with what Stadia can offer. She doesn't mention that you can play these games different ways besides a Chromecast and the controller itself, because she does talk about having to spend $100, where she didn't have to do that, but in her situation, her use case, that might have been her only option here. That being said, she does give other valid concerns about the shuttering of SG&E and how that may give people the wrong idea about Stadia's future. And that's a valid concern. Absolutely valid. Because the connotation here is that if Google doesn't believe in their own games, then why should anyone believe in Google maintaining the service to keep it alive and well? Now, of course, there's always pivoting within businesses. So there's the opportunity that some people or some businesses want to change course because maybe that initial course was just not going to provide the fruits that they were hoping to accomplish. And developing your own AAA games is hard work. The overhead costs of these studios, the salaries you have to pay to these employees, the marketing costs behind all of it, just launching it, keeping up development costs of the game as well. So, I mean, there is a lot to put in monetarily and, of course, mentally and emotionally and physically to make a AAA experience work. And not only that, but to keep it working at a consistent level and to actually make a good game to begin with. So they decided that the gamble on that was just not worth it when they could just pay for high-priced games like Resident Evil 8 to come to the platform or Cyberpunk 2077 and be a way as that gateway to get into the platform and just be a service for those that don't want to waste their time getting a new console or spending the money to get that new console. This is a place to play for those people, and this is the kind of articles she talks about in that exact realm, that she struggled to find a next-gen console, and she found a way to play these new games that are coming out. Now, of course, Stadia needs to keep that consistency up, and right now they're doing a good job of it. Having Outriders the talk of the town at the moment, while that game is having some developmental issues on all platforms, as well as having some update issues on the Stadia side. Having that game, which was my July Connect highlight, is a big deal for Stadia. Having Resident Evil 8 coming out day and date is a big deal. Having the promotion to give you a Premier Edition with it is also a big deal. So having that extra place to play, if you still can't find that next-gen place to play, is fantastic. And of course, having the click to play and you're good to go is a sweet, sweet way just to jump into a game no matter what. Of course, internet connection pending. So that being said, it's a decent article. It talks about there's some valid concerns. Definitely check it out, but let's talk about good old friends at Kotaku. Now, if I didn't do like these kinds of things, like talk online to people in video form, I probably would have less of a reason to care about websites like Kotaku. In fact, I usually don't go to websites at all to read my news. I just kind of get the feeds or whatever from Reddit or from Twitter and just kind of read from there. But I don't actively go to websites looking for news. I just don't do that. And it's reasons like this, because this article literally talks nothing about Stadia except for the headline, which is what people see and what people probably click because, they're going to talk some bad stuff here, but they don't. It's an article talking about Lost Words, one of the more well-received games from Stadia in its first year. It was an indie platformer that came to us as an exclusive for a full year. It is now available on other consoles. It includes PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and the Switch. And it's a great game from my understanding. I have not actually played Lost Words myself. It's of the slower side when it comes to platforms. I like the more harder, requires a little more preciseness, like a Celeste type platformer. But that being said, it has been received extremely well. And this is the only talk about Stadia at all in this article that you can see here. Free from Stadia, Lost Words story hits hard. And their first two sentences are the only time they ever mention Stadia outside of that. Lost Words Beyond the Pages, poised to snag a second lease on life. First release last spring as a Stadia exclusive. Now, yes, of all the platforms it's come to, Stadia would be the least populated. And of course, having this show up on other platforms gives it a chance to truly shine on other platforms as well. But Kotaku, what? Why do you gotta do that? Like, is the extra couple Twitter impressions really that big of a deal to you? I mean, if you look at the tweet talking about this article specifically, of course, you'll have a lot of people coming to defend Stadia, and rightfully so, because this is an unnecessary jab from a mainstream source. Granted, at least within the Stadia community, Kotaku's just not been respected for the last year or so. That Stadia has been in existence because of things like this. This is yet another unnecessary shot just because it's kind of the cool kids thing to do. Like if you're in school, and I know I've had this happen to me before, where a kid was cool with me when it's just, we're hanging out, but as soon as, someone that might be deemed a little more popular or cool to be cool in front of, they turn a little bit. They kind of, start sending jabs your way, and they'll kind of join in with the other kid, and then it's like, dude, you were cool like 10 minutes ago. What happened? That's exactly what this is like. I don't understand the need, the desire, or the want to have to do this. I mean, the angry tweets or the angry messages, is it really worth it all in the end? And apparently it is. I mean, if I was in this spot as a journalist, would I want to go this route? Me personally, no. I like to maintain my aspect of integrity because this is not the kind of person I view myself as. Already noticed? Might. this might be the kind of person they choose to be, just to randomly throw a terrible jab. I mean, free from state. Like, seriously? When it comes to this kind of stuff, you got to wonder, what are you trying to accomplish when you say that? If you're coming from a business aspect, what is your main goal with a title like that? Is your goal to say, I want to piss off Twitter. I want to piss off people that are fans of Stadia. I want to piss off Google. Like, what is your end game with a thing like that? I don't know. I really don't know. If you know, let me know in the comment section down below why you think someone would go this route to just backhand compliment. I mean, it's not even a compliment, just backhand Stadia. I mean, Lost Words is a fantastic game. It's received numerous good reviews, and it was one of the highlights for a lot of people last year. And if there was one game that you might play on the side, if you came for like Cyberpunk, this might be one of those games you look at and like, that looks interesting, and you'd be like, oh, okay, Stadia might be a nice little place for indie games. That's something that could have been said. This could have been said, Stadia's indie darling is now going to come to other platforms as well. And like, there's ways to make this a positive article all around. Those 3 words there in the article title, those first 3 words show a negative impression immediately. Now, I know Kotaku has a lot of this stuff happen all the time just because that's just the way they've chosen to go. Fine. But there's a cultural change that people can implement, and it all starts with things like this. When you start feeding the idea that it's okay to continually bash people that are investing into a platform, into a service, you're doing the entire world a disservice. You're continuing to create that negativity within the world. And God, there's just, I know it sells. Controversy creates cash, and negativity is extremely contagious, but that's just it. It's contagious. It needs to stop. And ironically, this video might have a little bit of that because I'm trying to kind of punch this down a little bit, but there's ways to be better. And granted, I probably would not have heard of this article too much today if it was nothing about Stadia, or if they kind of had a little positivity to it. Maybe. I don't know. Talked about the Wired article, but that was somewhat positive. What do you think? What do you think about these articles? Did the Wired article, was there a little bit too much backhand compliment in that one? Or are there valid concerns within it? In this article at Kotaku, the article itself is fine. It talks about Lost Words as a review, and that's okay. But the backhanded slap at Stadia to start it off, like, is that necessary? What's the point? What's the end game goal, Kotaku? Let me know. Again, thank you for your support, and we are back, as you can tell. Welcome back to the club, and we'll see you later.